Excuse me. Okie dokie, let me get into present. Can everyone see? Fairly okay?
Yes, we can see it. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So we will jump in. I've got a kind of a hefty agenda, but I'm hopeful that this is only going to last part of the meeting time, and then we can kind of leave it open to kind of questions. I was going to say I don't mind with being peppered with questions during the slideshow, so if you want to use the raise hand feature or just come off mute, feel free. If you'd rather hold your question until the end, that's totally fine as well. So yes, my name is Laura Szakmary. I have been with GSA for about 9 years, but we have just started the Open Government Secretariat about a year ago, and I was moved over there. Let me see if I can move this black bar that's in the way. There, that's better. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about how open government really got started within the United States government. Obviously, it's not anything that new. I mean, we can point back to Richard Nixon with the Sunshine Act and all of that, but we're going to talk basically about how it started under the Obama administration with the Open Gov Partnership. We'll talk a little bit about my new office, the Open Government Secretariat. We will talk about the National Action Plan that we are currently operating under, which is National Action Plan 5. We will talk about how we are planning to develop the next NAP, which is NAP 6. We'll talk a little bit about our multi-stakeholder feature, which is our Open Government Federal Advisory Committee. We'll have some information on how you guys can get involved, and then we will open it up to questions from there. Okay, let's jump in. So the inception of the Open Government Partnership. So effectively, in 2011, talks kind of started in 2009, but by 2011, the partnership had formed. It is an NGO. At that time, I do believe there were only 7 or 8 governments that were participating. We have some slides and statistics on the next page that talks about how much that's grown. But it's kind of meant to be this participatory, organization where countries come together. And the thing about the national action plans that I'll go into later is that all countries who participate in OGP are required to do some sort of national action plan. Now, ours is going to look very different from Canada's, who's going to look very different from Kenya's. So there are differences amongst the plans, but they do have to be doing some sort of open government plan, usually on a 2-year rolling basis. Let's see some stats. So right now we have about 75 countries. We've got some local members that's growing. So some cities have joined recently that might be of interest. So the city of New York just joined the partnership. The city of LA is part of the partnership, city of Seattle. So quite a few local members, and we are actively looking to expand a lot more into the state, local, tribal, and territorial areas. So that is something that we are actively working on. Currently, there are 400 action plans in place, so that can tell you just how much this thing has kind of grown. And within those action plans, we have about 5,000 commitments for open government, so quite a few. So this is just kind of a little graphic that kind of shows you. So after you've joined OGP, which is a bit of a lengthy process, you have to meet a lot of standards, you will start co-creating your action plan. So co-creation in the federal government of the United States is much more difficult than it is in other countries. And I won't go into this too much, but if anyone knows my boss, Dan York, he can use his favorite example, which is co-creating at the federal level is something that most agencies can't do with the public, which sounds bad, but the reason behind it is actually very good. So remember back in the day, yesteryear, oil barons, railroad barons, they used to basically be able to write federal policy, and we all know who that benefited, and it definitely wasn't the public. So unfortunately, because of that, we have some very strict legal requirements that we have to face when we co-create anything with the public. So we have kind of figured out a way to do that through our Federal Advisory Committee, which I will get to later. But the goal of the action plans is not that the federal government tells the public this is what we're doing. The goal is that they work with the public, and the public is the one telling us what we should be doing. So once you've kind of co-created that action plan, you move into the implementation phase. That is something that the Open Government Secretariat, my office, heavily handles. So that is monitoring the federal commitments. That is making sure that the agencies are doing what they said they're doing. And then it goes into an evaluation method. That is done by the Open Government Partnership. They will produce an independent reporting mechanism, an IRM report. I will be honest with you, NAP 5, we did not get stellar numbers in that IRM report. Some of that is because when NAP5 was developed, it was a little bit rushed, and there was not much co-creation, and there was not much creation with the agencies either. So we are kind of trying to learn from that lesson as a new secretariat and not make the same mistakes. So I'm just going to pause for a second. Are there any questions before I keep going? Okay, let's keep trucking. So right now, these are basically the major players that are involved in not just the open government partnership, but in federal, like leading federal transparency policy across the federal government. So we've got OSTP, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. They are really the ones giving us that top-down policy leadership. GSA, as everyone probably knows, we do the everything but the kitchen sink agency is what I call ourselves. So we are doing domestic implementation, but we also have a part to play in the policy development. We are doing the public engagement. We are doing the events. We are doing the Federal Advisory Committee. So we've got a lot going on. And then we have great partnerships with both the Department of State and USAID, and they take much more of that international management. So if I want to talk to someone from Canada, because I heard they're doing something interesting in their national action plan, I typically reach out to the State Department. They set up the meeting. All is well in the world. So I have to say it's been a very fun job just because you do get to work across so many different agencies. So very interesting, but let's keep going. So a little bit about my office. This is our team. We are lean and mean, so there's not many of us. So Dan York, I think many of you know, he has been part of this ACT-IAC community for a long time. He's our director and the intergov coordination, and he handles a lot of the NAP5 tracking. We also have Yvette and Alexis. They are heads down working on NAP6, which I also help a bit on. I am public engagement, so anything that's event related, press releases, social media, all that fun stuff. And then Arthur Brunson is our designated federal officer who will be running the Federal Advisory Committee, which as I will get into later is no small feat. So small team, but we are getting a lot done. So effectively, I think I've already hit on this, so I won't go into it too much. Our three main focuses for the Secretariat, again, are on that NAP5, that current implementation. So that's, tracking progress with the agencies. We have an interagency COP I'm going to talk about at the end for anyone that wants to join. We are getting into NAP6 development. So that, I do believe we'll have a timeline slide coming up that'll show you NAP6 development, so we'll get there when we get there. But yeah, we are really looking to go out to the public. We are trying to have public meetings. We are trying to use the Federal Advisory Committee to the best of our knowledge to really get the public involved in crafting these commitments for federal agencies. So that's a big part of the work that we're doing right now. And then all of that kind of hinges on stakeholder engagement. So we do a lot of events. We just got a new LinkedIn. If you want the link, I can throw it in the chat at the end. We have a new public website. So we are very hard at work trying to make sure that the American citizens know we exist, because that can sometimes be half the battle, as many people know. So just some brief things on overseeing NAP5. So we did have some new updates that went live on the new website. That was on Thursday, August 29th. I'll kind of show you those. But this is kind of the timeline of the NAP. So NAP5 was really created in December 22 timeframe, a little bit before that as well. Agencies had to provide their first round of commitment updates in August of 2023. Second round was in February. We are right now in the third round of commitment updates, and we are going to wrap up NAP5 and close out in December 2024. And then we will be starting a new national action plan, the 6th national action plan, shortly after that. So this is kind of just where we're at with the commitments, being honest. So just for some perspective on NAP5, there are commitments and then there are subcommitments. Most other international countries, even large ones, have maybe 7 to 8 primary commitments and maybe 4 to 5 subcommitments. Does anyone here want to guess how many commitments and subcommitments we have altogether for NAP5? You can kind of see it here. We have almost 80. It's too many. It's just too many. There's no way to really be more honest about it. And because there's so many commitments, it's hard to focus, I think, on the ones that really matter. So for NAP6, we are looking to streamline down the number of commitments for agencies so that we can really focus on making those commitments more difficult and something that the public can really find value in. but we are on track, hopefully, to have all of the NAP 5 commitments completed by the December date. So moving to NAP 6. So this is kind of just a draft timeline. We're still kind of noodling on it. But we're about right here in phase 2, the July to January 2025. So we have done all the stakeholder identification. We've done all the work to set up the Federal Advisory Committee, that is not an easy process. But we will be kicking off the OGFAC in October. Once that is kicked off, they will work together to provide recommendations back to agencies. The agencies will work with the OGFAC to kind of go through those commitments, say what's possible, say what's measurable, what's not, and kind of work together along with the public to kind of start drafting NAP 6, which will occur in the February to July kind of timeframe. We hope to have a final draft of this ready for White House approval, front office approval, all of that by October of 2025. And then we are going to have closeout November and December of 2025. So we've got a lot to do, but we are excited to kind of get kicked off on NAP 6. I'm just checking to make sure there's nothing in the chat. Okay. So these are some of the main things that we have been trying to focus on for NAP 6 development. We want to make sure that we're developing this in an inclusive way. So, for example, we've been doing a lot of public events, which are lovely, but I think if you only go to Austin or Seattle or New York, you're probably missing a large swath of the American public. So we are making a push this year to go to some more rural areas. I even suggested, why don't we just drive down to Southern Virginia? I mean, it's right down the street, right? So we're looking to kind of make sure that we're hitting more state and local areas and things like that. I do see one thing in the chat, so let me, oh, there you go, no problem. Transparency, obviously, we want the process to be very clear. So we're going to make sure that that's all over our website and our LinkedIn so that people know how to engage, when to engage, where to engage. And we will also be using the OGFAC kind of as that tool. Alignment. So we do want to make sure that NAP 6 aligns with kind of the broader strategic goals of the overarching administration. I'm sure you guys can kind of understand that right now that is a little up in the air. So we don't know who's going to be the next administration. We don't necessarily know what their priorities are going to be perfectly. And so it's a little hard to start drafting something without that information, but we're working around it. And then the last thing that we're really trying to focus on this time around is measurability. So we want to make sure these commitments are time dated, stamped. There's a way to measure it. Dan always tells a joke. I think in NAP 5, one of the commitments is restore faith in the judiciary. And we've kind of always laughed because it's like, how do I, what unit do I use to measure faith? Like, how am I supposed to show that I have been successful in restoring faith in the judiciary? So we're kind of trying to move away from some of those fluffy commitments into things that we can actually track a little bit better. And this is one thing I did want to point your guys' community to, because I know you guys are movers and shakers all over the IT communities across DC, across the country. So we are going to have a NAP 6 RFI coming out very, very soon. And that is kind of our first step to start engaging with the public. So we want to know, what should the, federal agencies be focusing on? What are those problems? So what do we want to identify? We're asking them to, if you have any, existing work that the federal government does that you feel is underfunded, or it doesn't get enough attention, or it's a lot more helpful and people don't know about it, we're looking to build on kind of that existing work. We're always looking for innovative approaches. That's one thing I would love to hear from you guys about. We're always looking for tech tools. We're always looking to figure out how AI is going to be a part of the game. Anything that can really engage the American public in a better way, we're very interested. Other countries, I have to say, are trouncing us in this. So places like Estonia, Ireland, Paris, they have created web toolkits and comment processes for the public to basically engage directly on policy. I mean, their citizens can go in and directly edit policy language. It's quite neat. And I don't think the federal government's quite gotten there from an IT standpoint. So maybe at the end of this, I'd love to kind of pick your guys' brains on some of that. And then obviously we are also looking for any resource recommendations that people have. So if certain data that we should be releasing, because a large part of open government is things like FOIA. So if you know any aspect of the open data land that we're working through, because open data is a big part of open government, we're also interested in hearing from you guys about that. So do look out. We will post on our website and on our LinkedIn when that NAP6 RFI goes live. And if you guys would like, and I will pop this in if I can, let me go back. At the end, I will pop some links in. If you guys would like to go to the listening session that we're going to have, it's going to be on October 9th. It will be public, be from 2 to 4 p.m. We've got that Zoom link that I'll pop in at the end. We'd love to have you. It's always kind of an interesting take. If you are a federal government employee like me who never worked a ton with the public. So at GSA, before this, I was leading our technology business management program. I was leading our FinOps program, but as most of you IT people know, that is very insular. So I was usually working with folks from other federal agencies and not necessarily the public. So this is a whole new ballgame because people care about completely different things, right? But we've had some really awesome and engaging meetings with the public where you hear things that you never thought you'd hear, great ideas. So if you guys want to come out, we'd love to see you at the at our National Action Plan RFI public listening session. And I know I've kind of talked about it a little bit, but before I go into kind of this too much, so part of the OGP, the Open Government Partnership Framework, which you can see up in the corner, the thing that they will hit you on really hard in that IRM report where they're reviewing your processes is, do you have a multi-stakeholder forum of some sort set up in your country? And again, MSFs exist everywhere, but they look very different country from country. Some allow public input, some only allow experts that represent certain communities to attend, but they have some sort of stakeholder function forum. So as I said, it is very difficult for the United States federal government to have an MSF. So our kind of way to do this was to kind of do a quasi way, which is creating that advisory committee. But effectively, as you can see here, it just needs to be some sort of structured environment that maximizes participation and cooperation. It's usually between government and civil society, and they bring relevant partners into discussions so that all voices are heard. So I will go into a little bit of the makeup of our OGFAC, which, by the way, we will be releasing the names of the 14 members as well as the chair, I believe very soon before the October meeting. So that should be up on our website as well. My favorite slide has too many bullets, apologies. So technically, this is, a lot of the federal advisory committees, they have to be approved by administrators. Some actually have to go in for congressional approval. Our goal here was really to institutionalize a process. It is very hard. I think many people know this. It is very hard to take something away from people once you have given it to them. So our goal here was to create the FAC in the hopes that even if it takes 2 years to really get things going, to get it functioning and flowing the way we want it to, it's something that's very difficult to just disband. So we just got it stood up. It took about 9 months. So we're proud of that. Usually it takes about 1.5 years to get a federal advisory committee stood up. So we did it at hyperspeed. But it serves basically as an advisory body to the Secretariat, my office, on a lot of things, but mainly their main focus is going to be on creating those NAPs, the National Action Plans. So they're going to be helping with, what themes for commitments should agencies be looking at. They're going to, have a whole set of recommendations for agencies. Agencies do not have to take them seriously, but we are hopeful that as we craft this National Action Plan, that the recommendations that are drafted by the OGFAC are taken very seriously by agencies as, this is something that civil society and the public and academia are asking us to do. So we did have our notice of intent to establish back in April. We had a public Q&A on May. And at that point, we had members, we had about, I want to say over 300 people submit nominations. And we were hard at work trying to figure out the best fit. I know we have reps from the federal government. We have reps from state and local government. We have a couple folks from academia on there. And then we, of course, have some people representing some awesome civil society organizations as well as industry. So it's not just civil society. We have a couple folks that are also representing private industry. But stay tuned on some of those announcements. And the first public meeting, I think, is October 23rd, 2024. So these are some of the member expertise areas that we were looking at. They didn't have to fall into some of these areas, but it was helpful if they had experience in these. So, anti-corruption efforts, have you worked in law enforcement? Have you worked in law? Did you work for, any sort of, DOJ, things like that. We are interested also, obviously, climate, environment, gender and inclusion. Digital governance was a really, really big one, because obviously digital governance is going to play a huge part, I think, in strengthening transparency across the government. But it is kind of the wild, wild west out there with digital governance and AI right now. So that's something we're going to noodle on. Fiscal openness was another big one. We're always interested in people that work directly with public participation, engagement, things like that, media freedom, and then, of course, as I've said, FOIA, access to information is a huge one as well. So we have members within the fact that kind of hit basically on all of these spaces. So getting involved, which I would love to see you guys. So I know many of you are industry, but some of you probably, maybe, fingers crossed, do also support federal agencies, or you are a federal employee yourself. We do have an interagency open government community of practice that is open to federal, state, local, tribal, territorial. As long as you've got that .mil or that .gov email address, please, please, please reach out. We're doing some cool things. We're actually getting some international governments involved. I think our next meeting is going to be at the end of the month, and we're hopeful to have some folks from Canada's engagement office there to kind of talk about how they have revamped public participation and that process amongst their countries. So very interesting and fun stuff. So to join, if you want, you can email me at laura.szakmary@gsa.gov. And again, I will pop a lot of these links in to the chat just so you guys have them once I am not presenting. So just some background on some of the stakeholder engagement events that we do. So typically when we travel to other states, the way it works is we need to be at a location that either GSA owns building-wise, or it's like a free public government building. So we've been going to a lot of the presidential libraries. So we were at the Carter Center in Atlanta back in December. We've done some events in Washington, D.C., like the Open Government Roundtable. That was with that was a great event, actually. We had a lot of folks from the public attend. It was very interesting. We've been working a lot with the Data Foundation, which is another NGO in Washington, D.C. We went out to Oak Harbor, Washington, and worked with the Coalition for Open Government out there. We are headed to the city of Austin very soon. And then me and Dan York will be heading with GSA's Administrator Carnahan to lead some open government partnership events that will be happening on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. If anyone has any tips or tricks for staying sane during the UN, please let me know, because it looks like it might be a little bit of a zoo. And October 15th, we will have another DC Open Government Coalition event. And then obviously that OG Federal Advisory Committee meeting will be October 23rd. So we've got a lot coming up, and we plan to have even more engagement opportunities. But I do want to point you guys kind of to the right here. If you know of a civil society group, you know of an academic institution, you know of just a lonely professor even, that might want to partner with us for an event, for a white paper, for a project, reach out, let us know, because we would love to work with folks in many, many, many different fields, because open government touches quite a few fields. So please do reach out, and we would be happy to have conversations with those folks. And I think this is the last one. So we also have a civil society listserv. This is open to basically anyone who's not a Gov employee. So you don't have to be in civil society. You can be in industry. This is for folks that don't have a .gov or a .mil, right? So if you would like to join that, you would send an email to the OpenGov Civ with join OpenGov Civ and reply okay. But you can also reach out to me directly, like I said, with the interagency COP, and I can get you added to that listserv as well. So either way, that you guys would like to do that. But we would love to see you on our public-facing OpenGov listserv as well. And with that, government listserv, same thing. You can reach out to Dan, reach out to me. Doesn't really matter. We'll get you joined as long as we've got your email. We can add you. And I think that's it. So let's see. How'd I do on time, guys?
You did really well.
Too fast? Yeah.
Fast. But yeah, so yeah, we're opening it up for questions. Feel free to unmute or post it on the chat.
And what I'm going to do while questions are coming in, I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can grab some of those links for folks, and I'll throw those in the chat while we're talking. And we will send the slide deck out as well after the meeting. I apologize for not sending it over sooner, by the way. So yes, if anyone is interested in the RFI listening session, please feel free to register at this link. If I can find the chat, but there it is. That is for the RFI. Please feel free. And then if you would like to join the interagency COP, or you would like to join the government-only listserv or the civil society listserv, just shoot me an email at that link right there. And I see a question that has come in. So, but for NAP 6, do you anticipate any significant strategic shifts? Ooh, great question. It really depends on the election, right? So I will be completely frank with you. I think that if it goes one way, and I think we all know the way I'm talking about, I don't think the shifts will be as major. I think a lot of the focus will be on, CX continuing. It's going to be on public participation. It's going to be around AI, a lot of those fun things. So I don't think there's going to be a huge shift there. If the election does go another way, not sure. Transparency might not be something that gets a lot of funding. We've seen that happen significantly in other countries where with one administration, they get great funding and they're able to do a lot with their national action plan. And then it's the way the cookie crumbles. The next, leaders come in and the next NAP they have is much smaller, not as great because they just simply don't have the manpower or the resources to do it. So for Derrick Hills, your guess is as good as mine. But we are hopeful that we show that this is good work and that it's not political work, and that this should be funded regardless of the administration coming in. So what does participating in the interagency COP look like? Well, you would help us a little bit with that because we are still really in the inception phase. So we just hit our 1-year mark in the Secretariat. The interagency COP has only had about 4 meetings. We meet every other month, so it's not every month, so it's bi-monthly. Right now, it's a lot of interactive work. So you are not expected to come in being an expert on OpenGov or anything like that. But you are expected to, if you can, try and participate. So we do a lot of mural board sessions. We do a lot of whiteboarding. We're coming up with project ideas. But I will say the community of practice is going to play a huge role coming up with the development of NAP 6 because that's really where the folks who are doing OpenGov at the agencies are all going to meet. So one of the gripes that we got for NAP 5, and this is before Dan or I had anything to do with this, was that the federal agencies were not involved in the drafting process. So they kind of got that national action plan slammed on their deck. And, Department of Justice is like, wait, we have 16 commitments. We didn't write any of these. Why are you personally attacking me? You know what I mean? So we are trying to basically have them engage with the Federal Advisory Committee, engage with the public, so that agencies are really crafting these commitments for NAP 6 in a way that serves the public, but is also feasible, has funding. I guess the way I would put it this way is some communities of practice, it's going to be a lot of someone just talking at you the whole time, which in case you guys haven't noticed, I really don't like doing that. This is going to be much more interactive. So I hope that answers the question, Trent. I'm willing to open the floor to, really any questions you guys might have. What role from agencies are participating? So right now it is open to anyone like .gov.mil. I will say we have a lot of folks who have joined who are the OpenGov lead or they are the public engagement lead for their agency. But I would like to build out that community of practice with folks that really have some of the same areas of expertise that I'm showing right now on this slide, like the OG-FAC. I'd love to have folks that really work in, access to information. We do have quite a few FOIA officers and things like that. But we could definitely use some people that work more in digital governance or open data. I would love to fill it out a little bit more with people who have some of that IT experience, because like I said, I think those are going to be some of the tools we need to make the government more open. So to answer your question, right now, I'm looking for anyone and everyone that really cares about transparency and wants to do better at their agency, but there's no hard and fast rule of what office you have to be in order to join. Laura, do you only want federal employees to join the COP or contractors as well? Contractors are welcome to join. I relish having contractors. I worked with one of the best contractor teams of my life in the TBM office. I would have been lost without them. So the way that works is you need to have that .gov.mil. So if you are a contractor between jobs and you don't currently have the .mil or the .gov, unfortunately, we can't add you. But if you have that email, you are more than welcome to join. So.
Laura, did you say, I wanted to follow up on a comment about the number of commitments, right? And so you were saying that the United States had 80 commitments.
Is that 72 and with the sub commitments, yeah.
And so with the sub commitments included there. So, is there a new target in terms of numbers for the next round? Or
Sure.
how?
Let me pull up our website and actually show you. Okay. So this is kind of our new fancy website. So over here, you see how it says implementation progress, monitor our progress. This is kind of where you can look at the summary of progress for NAP5. We also have the current action plan. If you want to actually read that whole thing, it is a 2-year action plan, themes, commitments, subcommitments, and it is very large. But some of the themes for that were, improving access to government data, increasing civic space to engage the public, transforming service delivery. Just a couple of themes, guys. Countering corruption to ensure government integrity, ensure equal justice under the law, quite a few. So I believe over here, we have a total of 36 commitments, but those are just the main commitments. I think with the sub-commitments, it's about 72. So in terms of size, the United States is larger. We have a larger federal apparatus. We have a higher and bigger population. I don't think five commitments is appropriate, but I know 72 was simply too many. So I think with the OG-FAC working with that interagency COP, they're really going to have to come up with first the high level themes, and then from there, what's actionable and what's the most important things to focus on. Ideally, I would like to see maybe 20 commitments, 25-ish, but no more than that. So it's kind of where we're at, but you can kind of see theme 1 commitments over here. It's a list of all of them. We've got our progress bars. Quite a few fun ones. In fact, if you work at a federal agency, you might actually see a commitment for your agency that you didn't know about, which is always enjoyable. Most of these that I'm showing right now are OMB ones, but if you go to, for example, theme 5 is mainly DOJ based. So you'll see a lot for health and human services. So, go and noodle. I can send you guys a link to this website. Throw it in the chat for you. But I would love to hear what you guys think is manageable in terms of a number of commitments, because to be quite frank, if one of the things we got dinged on in the IRM report, that internal review report, is that federal agencies had commitments and they were things that they were already doing, right? So should an agency get credit in the National Action Plan for work that they already had funded, had an office for, had staff for, and they just kind of were able to make it fit into the OpenGov lens? So we're specifically looking to do the opposite of that. We are not looking to just have commitments that are what the federal agency was already doing to begin with, right? So that is going to be a little bit more of a struggle, because that means that agencies are going to have to commit to things, funding things, makes it a little more difficult, but we do think that's the right way to go. So that was a very lengthy answer. I apologize.
So would the incentive for doing that be that GSA provides funding and they can kind of use that towards their other initiatives and they can redirect on their end, or?
Like grant funding and all of that. So unfortunately, in the past, I have not seen GSA funding agencies work. So unfortunately, no. That I do not think is going to happen. But in the broader scheme of things, right, open government is something that, you know, most federal agencies should be paying attention to. Transparency is incredibly important to have, you know, respect amongst the public, all of that. So yeah, the funding process can be a little bit difficult based off of how difficult the commitment is. Like, for example, if your agency has a huge FOIA backlog and your commitment is that you want to tackle 70% of your FOIA backlog, I'll be honest with you, I don't know how you do that without additional staff. I don't know how you do that without additional money. So the whole point of having this National Action Plan development process occur is that agencies will get to work with the public, with civil society on drafting these, but they will also have time before it goes into action to hopefully secure additional funds, detailees, things like that. But unfortunately, at this time, no, the GSA is not funding agency work. In the chat. So I will stop my share. As stated, I'm happy to open it up to any other topics. If you guys want to quiz me about open data, that would be great, because that is actually my weakest point in my new job. So we are trying to get more spun up in that area around AI and all of that fun stuff, and how it can be helpful in terms of transparency for the federal government. And you guys are the exact type of people that we want to engage with, because you have many, many years of experience in a lot of these fields. So please join the Interagency COP if you can. Join the civil society listserv. All of the OG-FAC meetings will be open to the public. They will all be recorded. They will all be put up online. That is part of the federal regulation process. Our goal with the OG-FAC too is, as it builds and kind of grows, we will have the power to stand up subcommittees on certain topics, maybe even a citizens assembly someday. That's my dream, at least. So we're hopeful that that kind of institutional body does get to grow. Some subcommittees we're thinking about is just having an open data subcommittee, which would be, you know, another 10 or 20 people from the public, from academic institutions, and also from agencies, all kind of working together around those types of things. So stay tuned, give us a little bit of time, but hopefully in the next 2 years or so, you see some of those subcommittees get stood up as well. Well, Nancy, I think 15 minutes, people might have a little bit of extra time to go eat some lunch or something. So
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, thank you, Laura, for sharing that with us. And, you know, ACT-IAC is here. As you know, between you and Dan, if there's anything that we can help with, just let us know. As you know, we're a collaboration between government and industry, and, you know, we're here to help you. We have a lot of expertise in our member base, and I'll be sure to send out the links that you shared to the rest of the folks who register for this meeting. And when the RFI comes out, I'm sure Dan will let us know, and we can share that with everyone as well.
sounds great. And I will shoot you the slide deck as well right after this meeting, so you have that. So that might be easier than you having to copy all the links out of the chat. So
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for attending. And we hope to see you at the next ITEM and MCOI meeting. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
thanks all. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.